we've done is we've tempered a bit of people that you know to people that you don't know. So, for example, everyone's heard of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and things like that, but we've also tried to add people that are Canadian and just people that have added significantly to the history of computers, but maybe you don't know who they are. So when you come here, part of our purpose is to educate people on the history of every aspect of computing. So one of the big thing is, of course, with technology is the people behind them. So that's exactly what our Icons wall does.
And to name a few Canadians, maybe.
Yeah, Jim Butterfield actually is a big Canadian on there. He used to do a lot of writing and teaching, and he ended up doing, there was a show on TV Ontario called Bits and Bytes. He's one of the writers for that, and various other publications. So he's actually helped educate a lot of people. Steve Punter, another Canadian, he actually created a transmission protocol that was used called the Punter protocol, was used for transmitting files back on bulletin board systems in the 80s. And Carl Hilden next to him, both of these guys have actually been here to the museum. Carl actually used to be the editor of Transactor magazine, which is a magazine that I personally loved and used to read all the time. And he also wrote a really good book called The Inner Space Anthology. And another important Canadian that contributed to certainly the history of Commodore and computing in general. And the rest of the parts we put on there. So again, it's maybe something that you've seen on TV, but very rarely seen in person, just because they just never released them to the public, and there's be no reason why the public would actually have one of these. So it's an interesting thing to see, and a good educational tool for us to teach people how CPUs are actually made.
And where did you get yours?
This actually came from Jim Butterfield, who was a significant contributor to education in Canada. He was a writer, and a lot of people interested in Commodore computers knew all about him, and that's actually where this one came from. It was from him.
Cool. And this here, right beside it, that's the oldest computer in stock here?
Yeah, it's the oldest one we have. This is the MSI 8080. This actually came out in 1976, and it was available for about $600, but you had to put it together yourself, so it was kind of like an IKEA thing.
Right.
But you could buy it assembled for $931, so there was a significant amount of money there because it was a significant amount of money to get it working. What's interesting about this computer, there's a few things actually, but one of them is that there's no keyboard and no screen. So the way it was sent and built, this housing is actually mostly empty. So it actually had the concept of an expansion bus very early on. So you could actually plug in a card to do the screen, a card to do the keyboard, and so on. The other kind of fun fact about it was actually the computer that, at least from a prop standpoint, that Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy were actually using in the film War Games, which is one of my favorite movies from the early 80s. It's a story about a kid who basically hacks into a computer and ends up almost starting World War III. And so it's pretty interesting to note when you're watching that movie the next time, if you watch it on, it seems to be on television still quite a bit. Check out the background, look for the inside, because you can say, hey, I've seen that computer before, and it's at the Personal Computer Museum.
Yeah, the red and blue switches definitely give it away.
Yep, cool, absolutely.
All right, so what are we looking at here?
Well, upstairs we have some non-interactive computers, but they kind of look interesting, so we thought they'd be great to show. Here we have the Superbrain, which is this computer over here. It's got kind of a rounded look to it. A lot of people look at that, they really think, hey, this looks like an old computer. It just has that feeling to it. We've also got the Oki computer, and it's also called the BMC. It's kind of gone by different names. But this is kind of interesting because it had a color screen. But the actual keyboard was also essentially a printer sort of slash typewriter. So there's again a different concept for how things are. You'd like to write instantly into DOS. It has a Lotus 123 compatible spreadsheet program built in. It has a word processor.
Will you hurry up? This is taking too long. Go baby, go baby, go baby. Alright. Pin number. Where'd you learn this stuff from anyway? From my mom, my real mom, I mean. Withdraw 300 bucks. Come on, baby, come on, come on, come on. Yes! Hey, it worked. Alright. Easy money.
And he plugged it into the thing.
Right.
Yeah, and so he was actually using the portfolio to do that at the time, which a lot of people, wouldn't have.
Now we're going to finish up the day with a little hardcore gaming on a, how many inch projector screen?
122-inch screen.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's a great place. If you find yourself in Brantford or thereabouts, be sure to check out the PC Museum. You'll have a blast.
Check it out.